Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughan, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women in digital who choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can join the movement at togetherindigital.com. And today, our guest is none other than Jenn Herman. She is a globally recognized Instagram expert. If you're not following her already, head on over and follow. She's a social media consultant and international speaker. She is the author of not one, but 3 game-changing books: Instagram for Dummies, Instagram for Business Dummies, and The Ultimate Guide for Social Media Networking. Her insights have been featured on major publications including Fox News, BBC News, Yahoo Finance, Entrepreneur, and HuffPost, just to name a few. But what really sets Jenn apart is her unique blend of business acumen and social savvy. With a background spanning administration, sales, human resources, and marketing, she really brings a holistic approach to helping businesses of all sizes, which we love, structure their social media strategies for maximum impact. Because as many of us in digital know, it's a lot to keep up with. And yet, Jenn's influence extends far beyond the written word. In case you've seen her books and read her books, she is also a sought after international speaker and is renowned for providing actionable tips. Like I said, go follow her on Instagram for sure. Great tips there. Invaluable resources and transformative training that empowers organizations to harness the full power of social media presence. And of course, some of those tips will be shared here today as we have the privilege of tapping into some of Jenn's wealth and knowledge on Instagram marketing, as well as just being a badass single mom and doing it all. And doing it really well. So get ready, everyone, to elevate your social media game with one of the best in the business. Everyone, please join me in welcoming the Instagram guru herself, Jenn Herman. Welcome, Jenn.
Oh my gosh, what an introduction. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Amy. I'm so glad to
Hey,
be
you know
here.
what? When we're in a community of awesome ladies, we like to hype each other up. So yeah, we're excited to have you here. Like I said, we have been following you for a while, and I've loved seeing, what you're building grow and what you're doing grow. And it's just very clear what you're doing is a passion, right? It's a business, but it's a
Yes.
passion. Like you love it. And that's what we love about you,
Yeah.
right? Because you love this.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's you don't do all this unless you're passionate about it.
Well, because our listeners might not know this, but you've built this very impressive career, being a globally recognized Instagram expert. While I mentioned earlier being a single mom, but also, if they look at your LinkedIn, maintaining a full-time job, folks. So, can you share a little
Yes.
bit with us about how you've managed to, well, do all this, really grow your business alongside these significant commitments of motherhood and running a business? And what sorts of insights could you possibly offer to those who are maybe dreaming of entrepreneurship while juggling all of these responsibilities that we do have as women?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll try to keep this short because this alone could be a 45-minute conversation. Um, but I started Jen's Trends, 11 years ago, and I've been at my day job for 14 years. So I started this while I still have the current job that I have now. And it really was a hobby when I started this. It was a blog. It was, writing about social media. There was no strategy. There were no clients. There was no, revenue. Like I wasn't doing it to make money. I was just bored on the weekends and wanted something to do. So I started a blog. And it evolved quickly. Back then, Instagram was still relatively new, obviously, and there weren't a lot of people talking about it strategically. So I fell in love with the platform and decided I'm going to start blogging about Instagram more. And because nobody else was, it didn't take long for me to start ranking on Google and start getting podcast requests. And next thing you know, I went to Social Media Marketing World,
Yeah.
which at the time was the biggest social media conference in the world. And I was like, I'm going to be on that stage. Like that was my goal. I wanted to be on
Love
that
it.
stage. And literally a year later, I was on that stage. And that was like my my kind of crowning
Mhm.
moment of like, I set that intention, I manifested that, and I was like, I did that. But then it was like, well, now what do I do? So it was kind of always, like I built this, like you said, alongside the
Mhm.
full-time job. And, it's never been directly an exit strategy by any means, but I've had all these life experiences happen. So I started Jen's Trends in
Mhm.
2013. I had my daughter in 2015. Then I got divorced in 2016. Then we had COVID.
Wow, yeah.
Like, so there's been all these life things that have happened. And what most people don't know is that when I got divorced, I paid my ex-husband all the alimony and
Wow.
child support. So I had to support financially, so I needed two jobs, and I live in Southern California. I live in a very privileged
Mhm.
neighborhood, and my daughter goes to one of the best schools. And you can't live here on a
Yeah.
single income, right? You have to be a two-income household. And so it's really a matter of survival.
Wow, yeah.
There's passion and there's desire, and I love what I do. My day job is great, and I love what I get to do for Jen's Trends. But it honestly was a matter of
Mhm.
necessity. And as parents, we do what we have to
Yeah.
do. And so having benefits and stable income and everything from the
Right.
day job is just too good to give up right now.
Right.
So you keep doing that. And then, but building the business, the one thing I best advice I think I can ever give people if you're looking to say, hey, I want to get into entrepreneurial and I want to, start this, it's two things. One, don't start out trying to make money right
Mm.
away. If you've got the full-time day job, build the business, build the
Mhm.
brand, build the
Yeah.
recognition, build your skill set. Take the time to get where you want to go without having to chase
Oh,
money. That was one of my biggest advantages. I could build a brand. I could go speak pro bono. I could go on podcasts, and I didn't care about getting paid because I had income
sure.
coming in from the
Mhm.
day job. Once you leave that day job, you have to chase the
Mhm.
money from the side business, right? So build the foundations of your entrepreneurial journey and your skills and your brand while you still have that day
Mhm.
job. And then the second thing would be make sure you communicate very, very clearly with your spouse, with your family, your kids, your
Yes.
parents, your friends, whomever it is, because doing something unpaid that takes a lot of
Yep.
time builds a lot of
Mhm.
resentment. And when you're building your entrepreneurial,
Mm.
start, you're not going to make a
Yep.
lot of money. And that might mean you get up at 5 a.m. on Saturday and work until 8 a.m. when the
Yep.
kids, are finally up and ready and for breakfast. But your spouse needs to know, like, that's your
Mhm.
quiet time. Don't bug me. If you're a night owl and you want to work from 7 p.m. to midnight, the spouse is putting the kids to bed and they know that's mommy's quiet time to
Yeah.
work. But you have to have those open dialogues and conversations, because once you start making money, the resentment comes down.
Yes.
But until you start
Uh-huh.
making money, there's a lot of resentment. There's you're not spending time with your
Mhm.
family. You're picking this business over me. You don't care about
Yes.
your family and you're not making any money. It's not doing anything
Right.
for us. It's really easy to do that. So you have to have open communication and explain where you want this to go. Like, you're doing it pro bono
Mhm.
now, but in 2 years, this is your exit strategy from your
Mhm.
day job. In 1 year, you expect to be making 10, 20, $30,000 or whatever that number is, but set those expectations. And if you're not hitting those goals, have that open
Mm.
dialogue with your spouse as well and say, okay, well, we're not where I thought I'd be in two
Mhm.
years. Where do you think we should go from here? Should I keep doing
Mhm.
this? Do I need to bring somebody on to help? Are we willing to absorb that
Yeah.
cost? When you start this, you don't have a team, you have your
Mhm.
family, and you have to treat them with the respect that you would a business team.
Ah, that's such great advice, Jen, from top to bottom, beginning to end, all of that. I love that idea of really leaning into building your credibility, your brand, and who you are, because I
Yeah.
think, we support a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs within Together Digital. We've had a lot of women come to the group
Yeah.
and start their business because they've joined the community. And a lot of that is, spending time sort of establishing your brand, your credibility, because the first year of business is almost ultimately referral and word of mouth. And so you
Yeah.
have to have that trust and credibility,
Yeah.
and word of mouth is the best way to obtain that. I think that's great. And again, being a fellow entrepreneur, support. I mean, this goes for any working parent
Yeah.
and any working environment, but for entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
solopreneurs, especially because you have to go that extra mile. And if you are doing the full time on top of the side hustle, all the more. And I do think as women,
Mhm.
sometimes we do think we have to do it all and be it all. And by all means, and for
Yep.
God's sake, no, you don't. Lean on community, lean on your network, lean on your support
Yes.
system, your immediate family, your extended family, your friends, whomever, your neighbors, for crying out loud, like whoever you
Yeah.
can. And I love how you said that, like articulate your vision for not just
Yes.
yourself, but for those around you to know where you're headed. I think sometimes too, we tend to kind of hold that close to our chest and then we expect some,
Because we don't wanna be wrong, right? We don't wanna say, "Oh, I'm gonna do this in 2 years," and then you don't hit a
right.
goal. Or, like, you don't want the people to be like, "You can't achieve that." Like, we're afraid that people aren't gonna trust where we think we're gonna take it.
But like you said, though, if you don't put it out into the universe, it's never gonna
It doesn't
happen.
happen,
And if you don't look around
right?
and ask for the help and support that you need in order to obtain that goal, then it's also not likely to
Yes.
happen. Such great advice. And
Exactly.
I 100% agree. I think that's one thing I've learned that I kind of, it's like I think it's a cool side effect of becoming an entrepreneur, having been somebody who was in an
Yeah.
agency environment for, a decade and a half, is that running a business and I'm being an entrepreneur is kind of like a whole family project. My husband is
Yeah,
involved, my
it is.
kids are involved, to some degree, and
Yeah.
they get to see and be a part of that journey and experience in a way that when I was working for somebody else, it just wasn't the case. It's really, really interesting.
Well, even I've had this conversation with so many people in, kind of in the even not even in this
Sure.
industry. Like, I have friends that
Yep.
work at home that have corporate jobs, but they work at home. As kids, we never saw our
That's
parents work,
true.
right? Like, our parents left in the morning and they went to
Uh-huh.
work and they worked. We didn't know what they did. They told us, "Oh, I worked in a
Yeah.
bank," or, "Oh, I'm an interior designer," but you never saw them
Mhm.
work. Our kids are watching us
Yeah.
work. They see how we handle conflict, they see how we handle stress, they see how we handle
Mhm.
coworkers, even if that's just your VA or
Yeah.
your accountant or whatever. They see us interact in ways that we never
That's so
got to. Like,
true.
they learn leadership from us. They learn some
Yeah.
business skills and negotiation and resisting the no and for better or
Right.
worse.
That's such a great
But
point.
these are things that we get to share that we never got
Mhm.
growing up watching our parents work. And so it's a
It is.
privilege.
It's
It's stressful,
fascinating.
but it's a privilege.
I know, right? Such a fascinating observation. I hadn't even never thought about that. All right, so I wanted to kind of ask you quickly too, kind of as you've gone through this journey, looking back, because a lot of our listeners are sort of on this path or about to go on this path,
Yeah.
and they're going to hit that moment. Every single one of us have, right, on this entrepreneurial journey. Was there ever a moment that you felt like giving up? And if so, what kept you going and how did you push through? Just for anybody maybe who needs those kind of words of encouragement as well.
I don't think I ever wanted to give
Mhm.
up. I've never hit that
Mhm.
level. I have definitely hit levels where I pull back, where I'm
Yeah.
like, we're gonna let life take its course, and I'm not like I always say there's various stages of acceleration as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur, right? There's sometimes you are pedal to the metal, like you are full
Yep.
throttle and you are just building and growing and throwing everything out there and doing everything you
Mhm.
can. And then there's seasons where you kind of come off the throttle and you
Yep.
coast and you're like, I'm just gonna relax this year, this 6 months, this quarter, whatever it
Uh-huh.
is, and I've got other things. I've got kids things. I've got, spouse things. I've got family things, illness,
Yeah.
medical things happen. And you just kind of come back off that
Mhm.
throttle and you just let it coast for a little bit. And I think that's one of the hardest things as entrepreneurs is learning to accept
Yeah.
coasting. We're so, I come from a sales background. You don't sell, you don't eat, right? Like, you've got to be making sales. You're constantly pushing. There is no stop. There is no slowdown because when you do, there's no revenue. And so I think it's really hard as entrepreneurs for us to take vacation, to learn to, say, no, I'm going to stop working at 2 o'clock and be there with my kid. That's why you did this. You started your own
Yes.
business to be there for your
Right.
family, but we're the first people to say, no, I've got to get this email out. No, I've got to make sure this project is done. And we don't learn to scale back. And I think if we learn to
Yep.
scale and
Mhm.
coast, then we don't want to quit,
Right.
right? Because it's when you're all in, it's when you're pushing so hard that you want to
Mhm.
give up, that you can't go another day, that you're
Yep.
burnt out and you just want to throw the towel in. And that's not to say that I've had days where I'm like, what if I just quit everything? Like
Yeah,
we've
we've
all
all
had
been
those
there.
days. Like I'm talking like move to an island somewhere in like, the Caribbean and
Yeah,
never
or
look
another
back.
planet altogether maybe.
But right? I'm like, it's extremes over here, right? It's we're all in or
Right?
all out. But
Yeah.
we all have those momentary thoughts. But
Yes.
yeah, I
I
don't
agree.
think I've ever
I
really
love that
fully
answer.
wanted to quit. It's been
Mhm.
more, let's find a way to
Yes.
coast. Let's find a way to scale back when we need to, and trust that we have the positions in
Mhm.
place, whether it's through support or ourselves or multiple revenue streams, whatever it is, that we can take that time for
Yeah.
ourselves and
Mhm.
rejuvenate ourselves so we don't get that point of burnout.
100%. I think I just there's so much I love in that answer as well. There is absolutely power in the pause. And I have found that I
Yes.
am so much more productive when I listen to my body and pay attention
Yep.
to how my mind is working, or in some instances not
Yeah.
working so well. When I need those moments of
Yeah.
intentional pause. And I think the beauty of running a business over time too is you begin to understand the ebbs and flows of your business. You understand the seasonality of your business, and so then you can kind of begin to take advantage of those times when you can start to
Yes.
press the gas or come off of the gas. And I think it's been one of
And as you grow, you get to set those ebbs and flows too. You
yes.
get to say, I'm taking the month of like I typically take the month of
Mhm.
December off.
Love
I
it.
don't I don't typically
Love it.
work because I want to enjoy the holidays
Yes.
with my daughter and my friends and travel and my
Mhm.
boyfriend and do things. I want to have a holiday
It's
experience.
fabulous.
I don't want to be working until December
No.
23rd and get 2 days of
Right.
holiday time. But we get that
Mhm.
choice. And I ramp up
Mhm.
heavy
Yeah.
September, October, so that I know I have the revenue settled so that
Yes.
by December, I know I can settle in and take it
You
super
can
easy
drive
that
harder when
month.
you've taken the time to rest 100%. And this is the beauty of like
Yeah.
when you work for yourself, work for
Yeah.
yourself. Like don't drive yourself into the
Yes.
ground. I agree with you. I think for as hard as it has been, I think deep down, you know, yeah, there's just never been like a breaking point of like, I just want to give it all up. Because it's just like,
Right?
how could I ever go back?
And that's the thing. I'm like, I've this is my
Yeah.
baby. Like I've been raising this business for
Yeah.
11 years. I and that's not to say that there isn't a time to pull the
Sure.
ripcord and leave. Like there's times where you just have to shutter a business and start over or sell a
Yes.
business or there are reasons why you will let something
Mhm.
go, but that doesn't mean that you can't
Right. You
change,
can't
right? You can't
pivot.
adapt. Like
Mhm.
I'm an Instagram expert. Let's face it, Instagram's not going to be here for the next
Sure.
20, 30 years. I'm not going to
Oh,
retire on
right.
Instagram. But that means I have to pivot. It means I have to think about long-term
Mhm.
strategies. But it's my business. I can do that, right? I can
Yes.
do that whenever I want. I can add additional strengths and I could turn around tomorrow and be like, you know what? I'm going to be a motivational speaker for
Right.
women. And that's my
Mhm.
prerogative. No one is stopping me because it's my business
Exactly.
to do that. And I think, like you said, this is your business. Work for yourself. You built
Mhm.
this for yourself. Work for yourself, and trust that you get to make those choices, whatever they
Yeah.
look like.
Love it. Well, we've got live listeners with us today. So don't forget, folks, you could use the chat and you can ask any more questions that you have about Jen and her entrepreneurial journey, that you've got about starting and building and growing your business. But let's do some nerding out on
Yeah,
Instagram. But first, a little bit more background about you. I mentioned in your bio that you have experience in administration, sales, and HR. I am kind of curious, before we kind of get too deep into the Instagram nerdiness,
yeah.
how has this diverse experience influenced the way that you approach marketing on Instagram?
Oh my gosh, it is why I approach marketing the way that I do. You know, I've been in sales since I was in high school, right? I've worked in retail and all that sort of stuff, and I've worked in hospitality. I've worked in customer service. So those have always been the bedrock of my marketing
Mhm.
mentality. Customer service comes first. If you have customer service, you don't have to
Mm,
market. Because again, it's word of
yeah.
mouth, right? Like if you're marketing and you're putting content out there, you're doing social media, you're doing your blogs, you're doing your website, you're doing, podcast, whatever it is, it's your customer service. When someone reaches out and asks you a
Mhm.
question, how long does it take for you to respond? How do you respond? Are you compassionate? Are you rude? Are you direct? Are you subtle? Like all of these customer service aspects are your
Mhm.
brand, right? And so that is your marketing. That is how you are known. And so that has always played a major impact. And then going into the corporate world and working in, I was an executive assistant to like the number two for a major, massive organization, like a global organization. And so I saw a lot of like how
Yeah.
corporate works and how one decision here has so many impacts, and how a person making a decision over here doesn't understand how that decision will impact all these
Mm.
people. And working in HR and all these other aspects of corporate, it really does impact everything. And marketing is kind of the face of the
Yeah.
company, right? Marketing is what people see
Mhm.
first, whether that's recruiting, whether that's customers, whether that's partnerships. Your marketing is what people see first. And marketing cannot work in silo. It has to work in conjunction with all those other
Yeah.
departments. If recruiting's over here trying to do one thing and your marketing is doing something completely
Mhm.
different, it doesn't align. It doesn't
Mm.
serve the business
Yeah.
purposes. And I think that's one of the things that so often people turn to social media, and they hire the intern, they hire their,
Yeah.
nephew or whomever, and they're like, "Oh, just throw some content on social
Yeah.
media." And it's not that it doesn't
Yeah.
work, but it's not
Mhm.
strategic, right? It's if great, you got likes and engagement, but is it serving your
Right.
business? Is it getting recruiting? Is it building
Mhm.
customers? How are you treating those people when they ask
Right.
questions? And all of those are such a huge impact on the business as a whole. So yeah, I definitely approach Instagram, social media, all of
Mhm.
marketing as one major cog in
Yep.
the wheel, right? It's all works in conjunction with everything else in the business. It will
Exactly.
never work in silo. And if you treat it that way,
Yeah.
it's
I
setting up for
100%
failure.
agree. Yeah, I 100% agree because I mean, just even from like a branding standpoint, and I don't think people realize this much, but it's such a inside out job, right? Everything down
Yeah.
from, like you said, the recruiting and the hiring down to like, because again, like how those customer service people speak to and treat the individual customers. If
Yep.
I have a brand experience on your Instagram page and I got the idea that you've got a great product with great customer service, and then I have a problem with your product and I go on, I try to like reach out to somebody and they're a total a-hole to me, or it's not the experience
Right.
it's like there's broken
Or no
trust
response
or
at
no response at
all.
all. Yeah, it's a completely broken trust. And if there's no trust and
Yeah.
there's no consistency within like the way that my customer experience is going, then I don't trust and believe in your
Yeah.
brand. And there's going to be no loyalty. There's going to be no continued word of mouth. And yeah, you could probably be the prettiest brand in the world or the ugliest even, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to keep returning. But yeah, I agree. And then as far as the platform itself goes, so why Instagram? What was it that kind of drew you to it? You said you kind of picked it up early on.
Yeah. I mean, so I will admit, like, when Instagram came out, it was definitely one of those, I'm like, "Oh, not another platform," right? Like, we had Twitter, we had
Yeah.
Google Plus, we had Facebook, we had all these things, and I was like, "I don't have time for another platform." But I loved it as a
Yeah.
creative. Like, back in the day, Instagram was about photography. It was
Yes.
about
It
visuals, right?
was.
And back in the day, it still is one of the best community tools, but back in the day, Instagram was a place where you could literally just comment on someone's
Yep.
post and like 2 minutes later you were
Yep.
besties, right? Like it was just such a community driven
Mhm.
platform, and you met so many people around the world who were so
Yeah.
similar to you and so just aligned, and it was so easy to connect with people on Instagram because it was so
Yeah.
simple in that capacity. And that was why I loved it.
Same.
And so I was like, okay, but this is so great for business. Like imagine if you could take that
Oh, yeah.
community interaction that Instagram gives us and turn that into customer service and loyalty. And so that was the real business draw to it. And I still to this day, the Instagram head, Instagram or Adam Azari has said he will never put clickable links on
Yeah.
posts. And I was like, yes, like I support this 100%. And I've always
Yeah.
supported it because it keeps Instagram
Pure.
so different from everything else. You're not a link farm. You're not just
Yes.
dropping links every 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And it forces us to be
Mhm.
creative. And it I always say, I'm like, the people who do Instagram well are setting themselves apart from their
Yeah.
competition because they are doing
Gotta
it
make the
well. They're
effort.
not just doing it to check the
Exactly.
box.
You got to make that extra effort
Yeah.
too. I do. It's so funny. I am a copywriter, creative director by trade. And even though I'm a copywriter, I'm still very much a visual person. So like you would have
Yeah.
thought in the days when it just first came out that I would have been
Right.
like all about Twitter, but I was never really that
Right?
like turned on by Twitter. I was when Instagram came out, I was like, yes. I have a place to
Yes.
put all of my pictures and like I've let everybody basically
Yeah.
just see my camera roll for all these things that I want to show and then I don't have to try to like write words with them because like Facebook was like already becoming its own weird little thing and Twitter I
Mhm.
was like I don't know I could be quippy I guess and write headlines but I kind of already do that all day for a living so maybe that's why I just like I don't want to do more of that. I
Right?
can just show pretty pictures and meet like you said there was a community aspect for sure there.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about misconceptions when you're dealing with folks kind of coming into the platform. I think that's something you mentioned, like the struggle with the links and whatnot. Are there any sort
Yeah.
of misconceptions about Instagram marketing that you tend to need to address often in your work?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones, so there's two. There's one, Instagram doesn't work for me. And then they're done. Like, if it didn't work for them once, they're
Oh my
just done with it. And
goodness.
I'm like,
I
okay,
posted
but
one
what
time.
did you
Nobody
do? What
liked
did you
it.
try? Like, right? It was like, but like people are so quick to give up on
Uh-huh.
Instagram, or there's so many changes. They're like, I just can't keep up. The algorithm
Mm,
hates me. So there's all these things where people come in and just assume that it's not going to work. So I'm constantly trying to like be like, but no, it does. You just have to give it its own strategy. And you can't do what you did on Facebook on Instagram, and you can't do what you did on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever and put it on Instagram. It
yeah.
doesn't work. And the other kind of flip side that I deal with a lot is from people who aren't in
Mhm.
marketing that will say, it's Instagram. How hard can it
Ah.
be? They're like, you post a photo, it's not hard. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't built a decade-long career on it being easy.
Right?
I'm like, I'm not speaking in foreign countries because it's
Easy,
easy.
right?
Um, so the people who don't do marketing think it's so easy, and the people who do
Ah,
marketing are over here being like, it just doesn't work. And
right.
so it, it's the two
Oh,
sides, depending on kind of who you talk to, would be the biggest
yeah, that makes a
misconceptions.
lot of sense, and I would definitely agree with your very first one of, like, I tried it and it doesn't work. People just don't seem to understand, like, the
Yeah,
engagement aspect of it, how just necessary it is. You can't just post once and put it out there.
yeah,
It's like building a website
right.
and expecting everyone to come and find it because you built and put a
Right, you
website
launched it, and you're like,
where
why don't I have 10,000
right, where is
visitors?
everybody? I'm like, because you just put a grain
Why isn't Google showing
right.
it to
I was like,
people?
because you just put a grain of sand in the desert and you expected everyone to find that grain of sand. Congratulations. It
Right?
doesn't work that way. Oh my
Exactly.
goodness. And we've talked about that quite a bit too. We just did this is like our social media week this week. We did for our members a social media masterclass. But actually was hosted by one of
Nice.
our members, Dixie, who used to work for Warby Parker. And yeah, it was just so funny because we talked about that. Like we spend, a good portion of our time being marketers, but really a lot of our time is spent being educators. you know,
Yeah,
just really trying to
100%.
teach everybody, but like, no, really, like this is honestly, like you said, it's more work than what you realize. It's not as simple as posting a
Yes.
picture and no,
Yeah.
you have to do more than just post the picture. All right.
Yes.
So let's talk about those folks that are struggling to stand out on Instagram.
Yeah.
What's one kind of fun, unconventional tip that you could share for creating engaging content that might help cut through the noise? Because it can sort of feel daunting, right? When we're first coming into the space and we want to make a little bit of
Yeah.
a splash.
Oh my god, only one. Like I have 12 off the top of my head. No. So,
Go follow her page
I
for
would
all
say
the
if you
rest.
right, exactly. I was gonna say, if you're really wanting to make a splash right now, the biggest thing, unfortunately, would be Instagram
Mhm.
Reels. It is a heavy push. It is something that Instagram wants us to be creating Reels. They want us creating video content. That doesn't mean photos don't work. It doesn't mean
Sure.
stories don't work. It's just, it's kind of like when Facebook said build a Facebook group. It
Right.
was like everyone went and built a Facebook group because it was like when Meta says
We
do,
do
we
it.
do. So reels are kind of like where and if you don't love creating video, I get it. Like I actually really don't like reels at all, but go look at my feed. It's a lot of reels because they
Yeah.
work. The key to reels, if you are trying to garner reach, attention, stand out, is doing shorter reels. Longer reels are amazing. I'm the first person to max out a 90-second reel. I have one loaded up that's literally 88 seconds. I'm like, yes, we just got the 90-second mark. I love those, but those are the educational ones. Those are serving your existing audience. If you're trying to grow, reach new people, stand out, you want to be reels under 30 seconds because those are the ones that go into explore. Those are the ones that go into recommendations. Those are ones that go into the home page for reels. Reels over 30 seconds don't get that type of exposure typically. So you want to be creating those shorter reels and you got to come in hot. Like I always tell people, you can't come in with a reel. And as marketers, as brands, we've been conditioned with the YouTube environment, right? So you've got this beautiful bumper intro and you have your, hi, I'm Jenn Herman with Jenn's Trends. And in this video, like you can't do that in a reel. Like in a reel, like you're coming in hot and you're like, do you struggle with it? Like, and you just come in hot. Like, you got to get their attention because if you don't have their attention in those split seconds, they're scrolling past you. So you can, after the fact, like you can come in and say, do you struggle with using hashtags on Instagram? I'm Jenn Herman and I'm one of the world's leading experts on Instagram marketing. Here's what you need to know about hashtags. Like, you can still put your intro, but it is going to be so short, so quick, just the high list of highlights. And it comes after you've introduced the topic. You've really got to capture their attention and make them want to stay. And if you're doing an introduction, it should validate why they should stay. So in that case, I said, I'm Jenn Herman, one of the world's leading experts. If you ask ChatGPT, I'm technically the leading expert. But you want to say that because it validates why they would stay and listen. It's not just you saying, hey, I'm some rando over here talking about Instagram hashtags, right? So, if you're a dog walker and you're saying like, here, like, this is why you should not walk on concrete. I walk dogs every day for a living. I've dealt with the burns, right? Like you want to validate in your super short introduction why they should listen. And then those are the reels that will typically get more exposure. But to your point, you're going to have to create 6, 8, 10, 12 reels before you start to see results, before you start to go, this is what works for me. This is what my audience wants. This is what gets attention. You have to test. You can't try one thing and go,
it didn't work.
It doesn't work for me.
I tried it once.
Exactly. I did that one reel. And conversely, I have one of the members in my membership. I have a membership called Profit Your Profile dedicated to Instagram marketing. And one of the members came in. Her first reel she ever created went gangbusters viral. It has hundreds of thousands of views. And it was like, which was amazing, right? And she was like, Jenn, I made a reel and it just won't stop. And I was like, well, this is great. But in the same turn, every reel she's had since then gets like 1,000 views, right? Like you can't be like, oh, I did one and it worked and just expect that you're going to be massively successful from then on. Like one is never an efficient case study.
Oh my goodness. Exactly. You're like, that's great, but don't expect that for the rest of the time. Sorry. And then you're like, don't look over here, guys. It's not going to be that way every time. I'm sorry, but good for you.
Exactly.
Good for you. That's like the kid on the field that accidentally scored a goal the first time playing ever. And then they're just going to be the best. You're like, I know, love you, honey. You did so good. That's not happening again for the rest of the season. But hey, you know what? Great confidence builder.
But you did
it once. You just have to keep going and keep trying. I love it. Those are great tips. Again, this is why you all need to go follow her. Because again, like I said, all very good, very actionable tips and advice. Because again, it's like, it's so clear that you study and you know the platform. And this is what it means to be specialized, which again, in digital anymore, Jenn, this is, I think, this could be like a whole other hour-long conversation. Having been somebody who came into the space just as digital was kind of coming out into the world, it used to be that you had to be specialized, and it's now we have to be generalists, and we have to know all the things and be all the things and do all the things, and that's just ridiculous. Anyhow. But I digress. That was great advice. I took loads of notes. I hope you all did too. Like I said, live listeners, feel free to drop questions in the chat if you have them. let's talk about audience engagement. As I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
it's really critical, and it's very much a two-way street, which I'm sure you'll probably get to in here. So, on that note, what is your favorite method for fostering genuine connection with your followers?
So I'm going to preface this first before I answer that with saying engagement sucks right now on Instagram. Okay, like let's just call it what it is. Instagram engagement sucks, and it's still honestly like right now the average engagement on the platform is hovering just under 1% engagement. It's probably about 0.8,
Okay,
0.9 as the average across the
good to know.
platform, which sounds horrible. You're saying like 1% engagement,
Woohoo!
but understand that like on Facebook, it's
Mm-hmm.
0.1%. You know, on things like Twitter, it's 0.01%. So at 1%, it's actually exponentially higher. And the only platform that has higher engagement would be
Yeah.
TikTok. So it's still one of the best platforms for engagement, even though it sucks. And it sucks for a lot of reasons. We've had a lot of changes in the last 4 years. Reels came out 4 years ago. We had a pandemic 4 years ago. There's been major shifts to how people use and consume content and create content on the platform. So it's created this massive shift. So I have 28,000 followers and I'll get 30 likes on a photo. Like it's statistically impossible to get that low of
It's
engagement on a
wild.
photo. But I'm like, it's so impossible. But it's not always about that
Yeah.
engagement. So that being said, the things that are going to do the best on the platform is to have a range of activity, a range of
Yep.
content. I typically recommend that you want to post on average, ideally in a perfect world, 3 to 5 times a week. If that sounds like too much, then just do one a week and use this same idea, but do it so you would do one post every week instead of one
Yeah.
post, ever, or one. Instead of doing 3 posts a week, you're going to do one every week for 3 weeks and then mix up the
Mm-hmm.
rotation. So the key is to do one photo, one carousel, and one reel. So we want to mix up the types of content because if you're only doing
Yep.
reels, you're alienating the people like me who love to look at the feed.
Mm-hmm.
If you're only creating feed content, you're alienating the people who want
Yeah.
videos. And carousels give you double the chance for exposure. So carousels will, if you log in once, you don't interact with it. When you log in again, they show you that same post with the second image in the
Okay.
sequence. So carousels give you extra exposure. So we want to be ideally doing those 3 posts a week, or like I said, do a carousel this week, a feed post
Mm-hmm.
next week, and then a reel the third week kind of thing. So kind of keep that momentum. And then within that, so ideally, if you have those kind of 3 to 5 posts a week, one of those should be a personal post. Personal for me is about me as a human, as a mom, as a business owner, because it's me, I'm my brand. If you are a bigger organization, personal may be things like behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes, meet the team, your mission, your value, your community involvement. Personal is something that makes people connect with you for who you are as a brand. The second post is going to be educational. You're providing value. You're giving something that they didn't know they needed. Tips, tutorials, industry news, anything that's going to give something of value that's going to be quality to them.
Yep.
So if your, target audience is, moms to toddlers, you're going to have educational content on how to entertain your kid in the rain, how to entertain your kid when it's hot
Yeah.
outside. Like that would be educational content, right? Then the third thing is your sales post. So you are going to push your product, your service, right? You have to have content in there. And it doesn't have to be a quote sales
Mm-hmm.
post, but it has to be something about your
Yeah.
business. Products you're working on, you're coming up on a new launch, teasing that launch. You're going to have content related to, here, discounts available or sale this weekend or whatever it is. So there's no magic ratio. It's not that everything has to be like an exact 20 or 30% or that sort of thing. But if you're doing 3 posts per sequence, we want kind of that one to each post to cover each of those categories and then mix it up. So this week, your reel might be educational. Next week, your reel might be
Mm-hmm.
personal, right? We don't want it to always be the
Yeah.
same thing. And that's going to keep the diversity so that you're not always doing the same thing for the same
Yes.
people. Because if they're not interacting with it, you start to fall
Yep.
algorithmically. When you keep it, variety, you keep them interested, they keep interacting, you stay higher in the feed.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And I've seen some people do this, and I'm not sure how you feel about it, but they literally like can all of their past historical content and will make their whole entire profile reels. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Why? What are you doing?
That's honestly like the worst advice I would ever. I mean, like there are some people out there who are video
Yeah,
creators and they have created an audience
sure.
around being video based. I get it. Like if that's your
Right. Go
brand,
for
I
it.
get it. But for
Yeah.
98% of the population of brands out there,
Yeah.
no. Like it's so
Mm-hmm.
alienating because if I don't log into the Reels
Mm-hmm.
tab, I'm not going to see your
Yep.
content. I mean, I might still see it in the feed if I follow you, but if I don't consume Reels, I'm not going to
Yep.
watch it. And if I don't watch it, Instagram's not going
Right.
to serve it
Mm-hmm.
to me. They're waiting for
To
photos
show
to
up.
serve me because they know that's what I
Exactly.
consume. So you have to have that
Mm-hmm.
variety. You can't go all in on
One or the
one or
other.
the other.
I love that advice. And I'm even just from like a user perspective, I appreciate that advice. Algorithm
Yeah,
aside, you still got to think about the people.
right? Exactly. And sometimes you do. Like sometimes I will admit, like I'll fall into like the Reels feed and I just want to scroll and look at random
Hmm.
videos and but most of the time I'm in the feed. I want
Yeah.
to see the feed
Hmm.
posts. I'm a reader. I'm not a
Yeah.
listener. Like
Don't have the
I don't
audio
like the
on.
auditory
Same.
input. I like to read the
Yeah.
input, right? So when I have to watch a video, I'm like, "Oh, you're not getting to the point that I want
Right.
to." Like
Let's move it along. Right. Goldfish
exactly.
attention span, folks. Goldfish attention span. You got 3 seconds, if that. All right.
Well, and that's why reels are so popular, right?
Yes.
Because they're so short. You gotta get to
So
that point.
fast. All right, let's talk about some Instagram features. They are obviously, like you mentioned, they're changing a lot. You could say
Yeah.
constantly. How outside of us following you, which again, folks, I can't say it enough. Go do it. The link for our listeners that are listening live, it's already in the chat. Thanks, Kaylee, and it'll be in our show notes, of course. How do you stay on top of these updates, Jen? And what is your process for adapting some of those strategies as they come along?
Yeah. So first, I'm going to say on average, we have 10 to 12 updates a month from
Golly.
Instagram. So it's a lot, right? So don't let that scare you. That's my job.
You're like, I
My
got
job
this.
is to figure out what the updates are, and then I tell you what you need to
Yes.
know. And that's the biggest thing, right? Like there's all these like they're always testing. They're always rolling out a
Yeah.
beta feature. Then like someone posts about it and you get access, but nobody else has
Mhm.
access. And there's all these things that impact that do you need to worry about it or not. So like you said, follow me, sign up for my newsletter. My newsletter goes out the first Wednesday of every month and it breaks down all the Instagram updates and tells you what you actually need to know about. Like if it matters, I will post about it and tell
Love
you it
it.
matters. If I'm not posting about it, it's not that big of a deal. Um, but I will make sure that people understand what those new changes mean for them and their
Mhm.
business. For me, again, because this is what I do, a lot of it is fed
Yeah.
to me. I literally had a woman message me yesterday and she's like, Jen, have you seen this
Yeah.
new feature? Like, people
Yeah.
know who I am and what I do, and they want to share
Absolutely.
news and updates. So I get a lot of,
Things thrown at you.
screenshots and beta, exposure to things from people sharing. I do follow certain blogs, certain content creators who are inherently known for kind of scraping into the back end of the platform and
Yeah.
leaking things before Instagram releases them. So I have my sources around that, or they're all public sources and everything that I follow. One of the biggest ones I'll follow is Social Media
Mhm.
Today.
Yep.
They are a website, aggregate blog of all social media content, but uh, Adam is the guy who writes for them primarily, and
Yeah.
oh my god,
Yeah.
he's on it.
Yeah.
I'm
As
like,
you
I don't
have
think
to
that man
be.
sleeps. Right. So that and then Matt Navarra is one of my go-tos as well.
Yep.
He's been sneaking into the back end of Facebook for years and years, and he's so
Yeah.
humble. It's like I've met him multiple times. I consider him a friend, and he's just the most humble
Uh,
person. And I'm like, but he's like literally the person that everybody in social media follows for what's happening in the world,
mhm.
right? But yeah, I go through, I dissect all these things that are coming in, and I typically, even Adam Mazzari will come out and he'll be like, this is why our platform does these things, and he starts talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, like, and I'll start reading behind the lines
Uh-huh.
kind of thing, and I've had so many, I'll put reels up or posts and be like, this is why you don't need to freak out
Right.
about this, or whatever it is. So I have the advantage of having been so deep in the
Right.
platform for so long that when someone
Mhm.
says this is, recommended. I'm like, yeah, that's not going
Yeah,
to work. But that just comes from experience. And that's where,
exactly.
like I said, I get to be the
Mhm.
specialist. You all get to be the generalist. Just follow me and I'll make sure you know
I
what you
love
need to
it.
know.
Well, and I think I just want to touch on something that you just said right there. That perspective and that historical perspective and wisdom was something that came up during our the end of our conversation during our masterclass on Wednesday. Because at Together Digital, we like to have deep and vulnerable conversations as women who work in a space that is
Yeah.
ever evolving and actually does have a lot of
Yeah.
ageism. And as women who have worked in the space, we have most of our members have 10 plus years of experience, bordering on 20 in some instances. So we've been around as long as all of this has been.
Right.
And I think a lot of us feel like we're kind of like we get put into this space of like aging out. But what you just said right there was what I told them, like that's the mindset you should have. I have the historical knowledge,
Yes.
I have the wisdom, I have the perspective to tell you when I see things coming down the
Yeah.
line and you're all freaking out. I'm like, chill.
Yeah.
It's cool. I've
Yeah.
seen this before,
Exactly.
you know?
Right. And it's so true, right? Like, and that doesn't mean that, we're always
Right.
right, and things are changing but we've seen dozens,
Right.
hundreds, thousands
Yes.
of evolutions of these platforms. Like, we remember Facebook when it was a college-based
Yes.
platform,
No
right?
pay to
Like,
play, open
we remember
API.
it,
Those were the days, baby.
right? Graph search. Remember when graph search was like
Yes.
the
Ugh.
big thing? And when like it's just we've seen the evolution of these
Mhm.
platforms and we know inherently when something's a big
Yes.
deal and when it's like a smoke and mirrors big
Mhm.
deal,
Yep.
right? Like there's these platforms will come out and there's been so many times where some little tiny change in terms of service or some little comment is
Mhm.
made and the let's call it the media, the aggregate blogs will pick it up and run with it
Right.
like it
On
is
fire.
catastrophic,
World's
world
burning.
changing. And I'm like, it's been like that
Right.
forever, right? Like this isn't even something new, but you just
They
happen
just
to
needed
find
something to
it.
talk
And then
about.
exactly. But we've been
To
here long
know
enough. We know
better.
what this
Yeah, I
is.
agree. And I think it's just a matter of internal narrative and perspective. And I do think so. It's like it's so easy to be passionate about this space and, to be, and so many of the women within our group are like just consistent learners and always hungry to learn and grow. But then there is
Yeah.
that intimidation factor and that fear factor of being cast out as irrelevant or too old to be in social
Yes.
media. And it's like, I just really just wanted to take a moment to pause and dispel that because I think I'm just
Yeah.
calling BS on it. And I think that you have
Yeah.
perspective, you have wisdom, and then you also have collective power and knowledge. And I think, Jen, the thing I also love about what everything that you're doing is that you do so much to share. Like you are not knowledge hoarding or power hoarding. Like you
No.
are like open book sharing. You've written books, literally multiple books. You've got like a tremendous channel that you're just really giving really great tips. Like you are walking the walk, talking the talk, all of the things. And I think that that's so helpful because again, it's like you shouldn't have to, again, do it all, be it all,
Yes.
ask for the help that you need. There's people around that are willing to
Yes.
help. You don't always have to be the
I always say
expert.
you can have it all, but you can't do it
Right,
all.
exactly.
And that's the same thing in this, right? Like you can have it all. You can be the
Mhm.
generalist. You can have all the experience, but you can't do
No.
it all. You have to go to resources for the information. You have to have a team to support
Mhm.
you. You have to like know where to go to find out, okay, is that change relevant? Or, when your client comes to you and goes, I heard we have to do reels. And you're like, well, okay,
Mhm.
yes, but you now need to pay me an extra $3,000 a month to create
Yes,
reels for you.
ma'am.
Like,
Because the time that it
right?
takes.
Like whatever that
Yes.
is, these things are all, it's so easy for people to just say, well, just create some videos for
Mhm.
me. Or, well, why can't you handle my DMs for me?
Right.
Or why can't like there's so much that go into these things. And if they want you to do that extra level of
Mhm.
expertise, you need to be compensated for
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Preach, friend. All right.
Like, little side
All
note.
right. Away from that disclaimer, away from that public service announcement. All right. Let's talk
Right.
some more techniques because, again, you just always got them in spades. And having looked at your feed recently, I have some clues, but I would also be curious to know if you could give us a sneak peek at to maybe one advanced Instagram strategy that you're really digging right now that you'd like to share with our listeners.
So my my biggest thing right now is, again, this is one of these things when Instagram says
Yeah.
we do. They're big on direct messages right now. and they are pushing hard for people to be in direct messages, in the DMs. It all goes down in the DMs,
Yep.
right? But it's not just for the direct message sake. What people don't realize is that Instagram has made direct messages a personal relationship. So, Amy, if you send me a DM on Instagram and I reply to you, we now have what's considered a personal relationship. You know, we went from like dating to married with like one conversation. But in that process, Instagram goes, well, you clearly want to know what each other are doing. You're having a conversation. So if you're following me, my content now ranks higher in your feed because you clearly have a direct personal relationship with me. It prioritizes my content in your feed. So it's really important that we are getting our customers into our DMs. And so we want to look at strategies that open up that communication because there's algorithmic advantage, but also it goes back to the customer service, the relationships, the loyalty, the interactions, building that time and communication with your audience. So we want to do things like, instead of saying go to the link in my bio, which still works. I use link in bio for anything that's evergreen. You want to sign up for my newsletter? Go to my link in bio. But if I'm talking about a podcast, if I'm talking about a webinar, if I'm talking about, something that's a short-term thing, it's always send me a DM and I'll get you the link, or comment link below and I'll send you the link, because now it's giving them a reason to show up in my DMs.
Smart.
It's algorithmically beneficial. It's a hot lead awareness. I know who's actually clicking on those links and interested versus go to my link in bio. They're blind links. I don't know who clicked them. Now I start to know who those people are, and they're hot leads because they have to take extra effort to request it. So those are advanced, techniques to get them in there. But even your stories, right? If you're putting Instagram stories up and someone does a quick reply with like the emoji responses, that's a direct message.
Oh, awesome.
So respond. Like, they send you a quick reply, don't just heart to like it. Like, if they did the laughing emoji, be like, oh my gosh, so funny, right? And then they come back and like, oh my God, it was so funny. You have a communication, So we want to have those opportunities wherever possible to encourage the direct message incoming and then foster that conversation. It doesn't mean jump into sales mode. It doesn't mean they send you an emoji reply and you're like, great, we have a sale this weekend, right? Like, unless it was related to a sale promotion. But it opens up that dialogue, right? Like, I don't know how many times I've had somebody go, hey, Jen, I just saw you posted about your daughter, And I'm like, oh yeah. And they're like, we start talking about that. And next thing you know, it's like, well, when's your next speaking gig? Oh, well, I'm probably, I'm going to be here this. Oh, great. Well, I can't make it to that one, but can you let me know when the next one is? Like, it starts pushing that conversation in a natural, organic way into leads and sales versus just posting content out there and hoping that the world is consuming it. It allows you to move in that direction. So my best advice right now is to really focus on that direct message strategy. How are you going to get people in there? And like we said at the beginning, when we talked about customer service, know that whoever's managing your social media, whoever's managing that Instagram account, has the ability to answer those questions, that is prepared to handle it from a customer service perspective and to do it from a relationship building, not just a, here's the link. Right. But to then be like, so glad you're interested. Here's the link. Let me know if you have any questions.
Well trained on the brand and the voice. And really knowing how to keep that engagement going. Love it. Yes. That was gold. Love it. Love it. All right. We got a few minutes left. Let's try to get through these last few questions. Oh my goodness. This is so good. Let's see. What was the most surprising thing you learned about Instagram's impact on business during your career so far?
What was it?
What was the most surprising thing that you've learned about Instagram so far during this whole kind of like span of experience?
That's a good question. I think how much lately, I would say, they have moved towards copying TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Meta was the king.
Yeah.
Like, Meta was the king on the hill. And when they bought up Instagram, or it was Facebook at the time, and they bought up Instagram and then have since become Meta. But it was, I wasn't upset when they got amalgamated into Facebook. I was like, good, this is going to give them the back end. They can do the ads. Like, it's going to help from a business perspective. It's only going to grow the platform. But they were always the king on the hill. And TikTok really, took them down a couple notches. And I have to admit, like, it's so, I just feel like now everybody is a
Yeah.
copycat. And it's like, now you got TikTok over here creating photos that, you can swipe through carousel photos
You're
on
like,
TikTok.
what?
I'm like,
Where am I?
what?
What platform am I on again? I'm
Did
so
you go to
confused.
Instagram and Instagram over here? I'm like,
Ugh.
we get to a point where they just
Yeah.
lose their
Mm-hmm.
uniqueness. And one of the things I've always loved about Instagram is how unique they
Yeah.
were. They, like I said, they don't do the links, and they've always been
Yep.
photo first. And now you have Adam Mazzari saying they're video first. I'm like, are we
But
though? Like,
yeah.
and I'm like, why? Why would we be video first? You've
Yeah.
never, like, it's always been photo
Mm.
first. And so I think, like, from a disappointment
Sure.
perspective, but also shocked that they would
Abandon themselves
literally
that way.
see that much of a threat in TikTok that they wanted to copy it that
Yeah. Because
much.
there's still just so much opportunity with where they are currently, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, because again, all of us marketers are like, I don't want to be making a million videos a day either. And then even consumers are like, I don't, like you said, I don't want sound on always. I sometimes want to just be
Yeah.
looking at pretty pictures.
Well, and the fact that everything cycles back around, like the
Yes,
short form video has been a thing for, let's call it, the last
sure.
5 years. The pandemic definitely kind of sped up the consumption of
Yep.
short form video. But TikTok's over here going to
Yes.
10, 30, 60-minute
Yes.
videos. I'm like, oh, so where that
Yeah.
long form content is dead go,
Uh-huh.
people. Like, we're back to long
Yep,
form
yep.
content.
It's always shifting and changing. All right, I'm gonna ask one more quick question, and then we're gonna go to some rapid fire questions in case we don't get anything from the
Yeah.
audience. But I want to make sure we get to the rapid fire because they're fun. So
Yeah.
looking ahead, what do you think will be the next trend or feature on Instagram that businesses should get ready for?
I don't know if I can predict any specific trend. I think Instagram is doing more for businesses, and I think that's what's worth paying
Mm,
attention to right now. Is they've done so much for quote
yeah.
creators, right? They're like they want to make sure creators have all these tools, but definitely in the last year, we're seeing more for
Okay.
businesses. They every now and then they'll launch new features, but I think they're really starting to recognize the business
Mm-hmm.
functionality, and that's been more functionality in things like the web version. It's been more functionality in direct
Mm-hmm.
messages, and I'm really hoping and expecting that we'll see more
Yeah.
of that to support brands that one of the things they're testing right now is actually finally having admin
Uh-huh.
access, where you can have some, but like other people that don't have your password that can get into your
Yes.
profile. So I think we'll see more of that shift towards what brands and businesses
Right.
need to be successful with the platform. And I hope
Me
that we
too.
see more of that.
Me too. I do because I think again, like as a small business ourselves, like honestly, like Instagram, I feel like we got more traction, attention, and
Right?
leads from that and LinkedIn than probably Facebook and X. We're not even really
Yeah.
on anymore. So, yeah. Oh, this has been so much fun, Jen. All right, we're gonna do a power lounge first. I'm calling this our power
Yes.
round. And I might start doing this from here on out because when I'm on other podcasts, I always feel like this is just a fun way to wrap it up. So, all right, are
Yeah.
you ready, Jen?
I
Okay,
am
let's do
ready.
it.
Let's do it. I'm scared.
All right, Instagram filter or no filter? All
Filter.
right, favorite emoji?
I'm like a smiley face emoji. I'm always there for a good
Love
smiley
it.
face.
Reels or stories? Which do you prefer?
Oh God.
Okay.
Stories.
All right. Most overused hashtag.
For me or in general?
Let's go in general.
In general, things like hashtag love. Like it's just like 8 quadrillion people use that hashtag. Like just don't
Hashtag
even.
love.
Don't.
All right. For you, most overused hashtag then.
Hashtag Jen's Trends. I put it on everything.
Way to stick with your hashtag
Right?
strategy
I'm
though.
with that branding.
Gotta stick with it. All right. And then last but not least, favorite Instagram account to follow for inspiration.
So I don't know if it's my favorite for inspiration, but it's one of my favorite
Good.
accounts is actually the
Uh-huh.
TSA. The people that make you take your shoes off at the
Love it.
airport. It is one guy that runs that account, and it is dad joke central. It is
Love it.
quirky. It is fun. They have the worst visuals known to
Uh-huh.
mankind, but their captions are witty. They are so great with educational information in their stories. It's an all around perfect example of like who should not do well on
That is
Instagram.
doing it.
Just killing it on
I adore
Instagram.
it. Well, I guess they're going to get one more follow today because I'll be sure to check it out as well. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if any members are on and listening right now that can drop it into the live chat. I'm having like a Friday brain fart moment, but I feel like Dixie shared an example. I don't know if it was the TSA, and that'd be funny if it was, but there was another like very kind of blasé type of like government organization that she shared as like a really cool LinkedIn profile that she's like, and it's amazing. You all should follow it. And I was like, oh, because again, it's such a like you said, it's such a creator space. And I think you don't have to come
Yeah.
at it as all business if you really just kind of look at it as a tool and a way to connect. It's community. That's what attracted you to it first, right? Was it was a community
Yeah.
platform as a way to engage and talk to your customers and build relationships. Yeah, you could have
Yeah.
something really great there. Oh, here we go. Thanks, Julie. The New Jersey Gov. Okay, the New Jersey Gov
Oh,
site. So there you go. You've got one more to add there, Jen.
I will have to check that one out for sure.
Thanks, Julie. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you all learned as much as I did and enjoyed the conversation. Jen, thank you so much again. It was an absolute pleasure having you here with us. Follow Jen's Trends on Instagram. Also, we included her LinkedIn above, and we'll include those in the show notes. Jen, it was great. I hope you all have a
Thank
fantastic
you so much. This was fun.
have a fantastic Friday, everybody. We will see you next week. Until then, keep asking, keep giving, and keep growing. Bye, everybody.
Produced by Heartcast Media.